Hey everyone, we're just a few minutes past the hour, waiting for people to trickle in. We'll be starting momentarily. You are in the right place. Thanks for joining us. All right, well, we'll begin. Go ahead. So welcome. Thank you everyone for joining. It looks like we had about 100 people sign up, so really thank you. We had just a range of attendees from business owners, contractors, some existing customers and developers, just a range of solar industry professionals. So thank you for joining. This is our first DG webinar, and this is titled Commercial Solar for Facility Owners. My name is Langlois, and I'm with EDP Renewables North America on the DG team. Just as a quick background, EDP is the national utility of Portugal, and EDP Renewables, or EDPR, is really a global company. We are the fourth largest owner of renewable assets in the world, and what's becoming more known is that EDPR has a DG platform in the United States. We're active in over 20 states with hundreds of operational projects. And here I'm joined by one of our project development leads here, Tim Montague, who is going to join us in the conversation. So welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Lewis. It's exciting to bring this event to our audience. I want to thank Tom Werrick and Jessica at EDPR for helping us organize the event, and for everyone on the DG team for all the work that you guys do day in and day out. I'm Tim Montague. I am a project developer for EDPR, and I also am the host of the Clean Power Hour podcast. Go ahead to the next slide, Lewis, and I will introduce our outline for today. We hope to make this interactive, so if you have questions about commercial solar at any time, just put those in the chat, and we will address them either on the fly or certainly at the end of the presentation or end of discussion. This is meant to be a conversation between Lewis and I about how commercial solar works for facility owners. And so we have 5 main segments to the presentation today: commercial solar, what it is and how facility owners can benefit; site qualification, what makes a good solar project; geographic locations where solar produces the best ROI; some examples of roof, ground, and carport solar; and then we will do Q&A.
Great.
So, commercial solar, what is it and how can facility owners benefit? You know, solar PV has been around since 1954 when it was invented at Bell Labs in New Jersey. So it is now 70 plus years old. It is mature technology. It comes in several forms. Roof or ground mount are the 2 basic formats. You can do third-party ownership, which is a solar power purchase agreement, which means no money down for the host of the project, which is a wonderful way to save money and go green with no expense. You can do what's called behind the meter versus community solar. Behind the meter means the solar array is producing energy for your facility. So the array is connected to a facility, but it is also grid connected. So we use these expressions interchangeably: behind the meter or grid tied solar, as opposed to off grid, where you're just like on a mountaintop or in the woods on with a cabin. And then there's community solar, which is also DG, distributed generation, but a different format, where you have a central power plant, say a 5 megawatt community solar array, and then you have subscribers from residents in that territory. Solar produces electricity from sunshine. It is semiconductor technology. These black panels that you see on the slide here, they collect photons from the sun, which is a ginormous fusion reactor in the sky, just raining down this energy on us, which creates all of life on Earth. Well, now we have a way to convert those photons directly to electricity, which of course is what all of our infrastructure runs on. And you can, of course, then save money with that. But there's other benefits, and I like to call this the value stack of solar. It's good for saving money, but it's also good for reducing your carbon footprint or your environmental footprint. And so this dials into ESG and CSR. That's environment, social, and governance, as well as corporate social responsibility. So if your company or your organization has a mission to be more corporate friendly, so to speak, to the community that you are based in, this solar energy is a great way to do that. And then, of course, for educational organizations, for schools, colleges, and universities, there is a STEM component. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And of course, this is technology that feeds into infrastructure, and it's a great learning tool. And there's many ways that you can leverage a solar project, whether that's on your roof or in your backyard, or even a community solar project nearby. So there are many ways to leverage solar for STEM learning and educating the next generation about the wonders of science and technology and clean energy. You know, we are going to completely green the grid by 2050 in the United States. That is very clear now. And so it means lots and lots of economic growth, economic opportunity, and of course, jobs. And then we're going to give some project types. And the main project types are rooftop, ground mount, and carport. So you'll see examples of those. And I'll let you take the next slide, Lewis.
Great. So now that we know what it is, we want to determine how can we apply it. So I think site qualification can be tricky, and we want to know what makes a good solar project. It is dynamic. There are many factors that go into it, and for purposes here, we wanted to break it down really into the technical side and the non-technical side. So, when we begin, if we're looking at on-site solutions, then you typically want to understand your energy load. So that means you want to have your utilities aggregated and want to have an understanding of beyond what your monthly spend is, just what your overall electric component is. Typically, if you have 1 million kilowatt hours a year, or a facility size with over 100,000 square feet of roof or some large area next to it, then chances are on-site solar is going to be a fantastic opportunity in many locations. Well, on the technical side, when we're doing rooftop, there are many things when we consider rooftop. The two main parts are the condition of the roof from the membrane and the warranty perspective, and the second is the structural. And this is typical analysis that will need to be completed before we can get a project off the ground. For nearby space, this is where we can get into carports and ground mount. So the space availability, understanding that it's just part of the parcel, perhaps many facilities have adjacent land next to it. These can be explored as well. On the right here, we have a sample layout to indicate, we have both rooftop and carport projects here. The ones that are going on top of the asphalt, are canopy projects. And these are, provide nice shade, which can be a great employee benefit, as well as a visual representation of what we're doing for sustainability and the environment. On the technical side, it's really, if you're looking at on-site solar for behind the meter, you need to have enough electricity where you can benefit from the direct offset that the solar generation will contribute. And then you need to have the physical and viable space next to it. We think it's important that beyond just the technical viability is to understand, how this can actually get done. Tim and I and at EDPR, we are solar energy professionals, but we work with a wide range of businesses, whether it's a municipality or a manufacturing plant or a nonprofit. And, we are not experts in each one of those businesses. And so we don't know how those decisions, are often made. And one of the things that's important is to understand from a customer qualification perspective is who's going to be evaluating it on that side. If we have representation from the facilities team, from the technical counterparts, as well as the operations and finance and legal. I think that is very important, and to know both at the site level, if it's an owner occupier and everything is at the, done at the local level, or perhaps there's a portfolio consideration and we need to look at both the site decision making and the corporate level. And lastly, I think what we found is we have the most success when we're solving a problem together, when we understand what the success criteria are for a project. And this can really range. We just briefly discussed, ESG and CSR goals, and I think those can be very meaningful drivers to determine what success looks like. But we also know that those are, 2030 goals, 2050 goals. And so a typical solar project can be done, in I would say under 2 years. And so to do that, we need to have a very tangible success criteria. This can be done at, utilizing the space. It can be relieving staff time to be able to, not add another project to the team's project management pipeline. And most often there's a financial component as well. So having 5+% savings every month, or having, $100,000 each year saved. We find it's very helpful to understand what that success criteria is.
Louis, I'm glad you mentioned owner occupied. That is one of the key criteria for a good solar facility. There are many facilities in the United States. Warehouses are, one of these types of facilities that are often not occupied by the owner of the facility. And there are companies that are developing solar on their warehouses, so it's not impossible. But in general, we are looking for facilities that are owner occupied in order to do an efficient solar project. The reason for this is you want to offset your electric load, you want to reduce your power bill, and so you want to be responsible for that. And many times the tenants are paying the power bill in a non-owner occupied facility. So it's a simple nuance, but important for facility owners. And then I wanted to ask you, Louis, when you think about a good team or an effective team or a prevalent team that might tackle a solar project, who would we be talking to?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it can range because titles and teams are dynamic within an organization. I think often there's certainly going to be somebody who is directly responsible and understands the facility operations. This could be a director of facilities, a director of engineering, director of operations, or even the CFO. But somebody who intimately knows the site and is responsible for it, because each site is unique. I think an old mentor once said, once you've seen one building, you've seen one building. And it's very dynamic. We need to understand how to access the building and what the constraints are. In addition to the facilities, there's somebody responsible on the finance and legal side who's really going to see where the change in energy bills and the direct energy benefits are going to materialize. I just want to make sure that the benefits from the project, materialize into concrete financial benefits, and to know how that's going to impact the site's business. Are there additional qualifications that you look for?
I think it's very important that companies are familiar with their decision-making process. And so whether I'm talking to the facilities manager or director or the CFO, I just very early in the process want to get some feedback on what is your decision-making process, because this is a fairly large decision. While we're not asking for money up front, that's one of the beauties of our business model, is we want to own the solar facility. We want to design, engineer, procure, construct, and own and operate for the lifetime of the system, which makes it very easy, relatively speaking. We are putting a facility on your ground or on your roof, and so it's a process. And so you just want to know, how do we as a company or an organization make decisions and just be able to communicate that and then be able to communicate that up and down the chain of command, so to speak.
Yeah, well said. I agree. And I think with each individual site, we talked about the individual sites, but we also want to talk about just the geography. I think we have representation on the line from nationally, and we're certainly have national operations. So we have projects in over 20 states, and we have Tim right here is representing the Midwest and knows that market very intimately, and I'm actually on the West Coast. But when we look at geographies, when we're looking at what produces the best ROI, we're typically breaking this down into 3 tiers. The tier 1 is going to be where solar is going to be the most cost effective on site all the time. Any day of the week, we're going to be able to, with an on-site solar, is going to be more cost effective than what the customer is currently paying from the bill. So if you're in one of these regions, you want to start looking at this now. The tier 2 sites are going to be where I'd say it's borderline. It's not going to win in every case. There's probably at grid parity. So you may be slightly above, slightly below, and you really just need to do the analysis to make sure and come up with that success criteria and know if it's going to work. And with tier 3, or the remaining parts, it's where it's challenging. The United States is a pretty complicated space for DG, and there are still some states or some even jurisdictions within states that don't allow third-party financing or don't allow net metering, and that can produce just drive some uncertainty. So we wanted to provide this brief categorization. Tier 1 is going to be where it makes sense, where in all cases, and that's going to be because the regulatory environment is favorable, and then you have utility rates that are from the grid are rather high, and so producing on site can be lower. And then or there's incentives. I want to call out just Illinois here because Illinois, the rates would be, I would say, is about in a tier 2 state. However, there's the passage of CEJA and the adjustable block program that is very lucrative, and that certainly puts it in a tier 1 because these are amazing incentives that we don't want to see pass by and can be very attractive. I just saw a question come in. Thank you for asking about Pennsylvania. This is a market that we're monitoring quite regularly, and I would say that's more of a tier 2 state. We have successful projects in Pennsylvania, but we want to. It doesn't make sense in all cases, and we're following the market. We certainly hear rumors of community solar programs coming up there.
Yeah, I also wanted to address Laura's question about why the 100,000 square foot under roof is a qualifier. Good question, Laura. That's just a general rule of thumb, and it has to do with the size of the solar facility. You can certainly solarize a smaller facility, but we at EDP in general are just looking for large C&I solar projects, and we qualify that with a 1 megawatt limit, which is about 1 million kWh. But if you have a facility that's in the gray zone, let's say 75 to 100,000 square foot, talk to us and we will help you understand. And I can give you a quick analysis of any facility if you have your kWh data available or your energy bill available. So that's one of the beauties of rooftop solar is it's a very easy analysis to say, oh yeah, we could or we could not address that facility and make it pencil. Now, penciling is a little more of a detailed analysis, or what is the ROI. So anyway, I also wanted to paint a little bit of nuance onto Lewis's description of the tiers. We have California, which is the most mature market in the U.S. On a sunny, windy day, California gets more than half their power from wind and solar now. And they were an early adopter because they're a forward-looking state from a legislative perspective, from a tax perspective, and a technology perspective, but they also have expensive power. The more you pay per kWh, the better solar is going to generate ROI for you, because sunlight to electrons, right, means that solar produces more ROI. Here in the Midwest, we are challenged with very low energy rates in general. Industrial customers might be paying 4 to 5 cents per kWh, and that's why we need incentives like the legislation Lewis mentioned called CEJA, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which is a game changer. It changes the payback period, it greatly shortens it, and greatly enhances the opportunity, so to speak, for developers to participate in third-party ownership, which is our business model, and make solar go mainstream, so to speak. So if your state has an RPS, a renewable portfolio standard, that has net metering, and you have some incentive or expensive power, it's an either or, then you probably have a good state. And if your state is not a tier 1 or tier 2 today, it doesn't mean it won't be in 5 years. This is a very dynamic landscape, as Lewis pointed out. Anything else about geography that you want to tell the audience, Lewis?
Sure. I think that, tier 2, and I think there's a comment for asking clarity on Florida, Texas, and Colorado. We really just have to run the numbers, I think, is the best way to do it. And you need to just look at the facility, look at the current utility environment, and determine what the options are. When one of the options, behind the meter, which we discussed, is offsetting it directly, and then the second is offsite or community solar. And Colorado has a small community solar market. So if you have a site in Colorado and the facility doesn't work, there may be an opportunity to enroll in a local community solar program. With Florida and Texas, the rates what we're able to do with solar, I would say, is about grid parity. There can be amazing projects in both of those states. I think there's fantastic opportunity, but the regulation in terms of availability for third-party ownership, and the reason third-party ownership is important is just because it can allow for no capital up front. So for people looking to budget and not having several $1,000,000 that they're looking to spend to construct and purchase one, using a power purchase agreement and no capex can be restrictive state by state.
Yeah, I think that's a very important distinction, and helps customers understand. We are an energy company. That is our business day in and day out. You are in the business of educating people, or running a wastewater treatment facility, or running a hospital, or running a factory, or a warehouse. And so it could be quite intimidating to do an energy project if you're also intending to be the long-term owner, and it is very capital intensive. And so a third-party power purchase agreement is an amazing tool to give, for example, nonprofits and schools and municipalities the value stack of solar, the environmental benefits, the financial benefits, and decarbonizing the economy. We all recognize here in 2022, right, that climate change is real and we need to decarbonize the economy, and everyone can participate in that now with the price reductions that we've seen in the technology and the incentives that we have. We should mention the IRA, that is the Inflation Reduction Act. That is now extended and sweetened the tax incentives for solar in a number of ways, and it is a game changer. So we have wind at our back, and it's very heady days in renewable energy.
Yeah, that's been an exciting change with all the uncertainty we've seen in the past couple of years with supply chain disruptions and the pandemic. It's been tough in the industry, and I think the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act is historic, and it really provides some excitement in all aspects. And I think here the tax incentives at the federal level, we finally have clarity, so we know that it's going to be 30% for the next 10 years. We just have more clarity than that even. However, we've seen the local factor, the local utility, city, state may have additional incentives, and these are changing all the time. And many companies and partners, either don't track this or don't have the resources to. And I would say, at EDPR, we have a full team that is doing this. And you can certainly rely on us if you want to check in at any time to let us know if something has changed in their state. I think with incentives, I'm just going to move forward to the next one in terms of just some of the case studies and examples that we have in terms of both rooftop, carport, and ground mount. For on-site solar, these are successful projects that we've completed. Walmart was one of our is one of our largest customers. We've done over 60 plus properties of theirs throughout the country, both retail and warehouse. And I think that's a really good testament to just the overall understanding the different environments throughout the country and just building that relationship. We've also done work with schools and colleges, and the education component is really rewarding there, just in terms of demonstrating what we're doing with the campus and converting that to both to jobs and environmental impact, and industrial facilities as well. Be happy to go through some of these examples, and I know that we have 45 minutes just for this, but we're approaching the 30-minute mark, and I just wanted to call out that if you are leaving or you're considering looking at solar either this year or next year, just as we'd love to work with you, and please reach out. We will, as a follow-up, send an invite with this material, as well as how to contact Tim or myself. I think just shifting back here, Tim, I mean, in terms of case studies and examples, what do you see? You want to just discuss a project, or even the importance of how important the local factor is in a project as well?
Yeah, I would encourage people who are not familiar with solar to just Google, for example, big box stores and solar, and you will see that many of the large retailers, the IKEAs, the Walmarts, the Targets, the Home Depots of the world are installing rooftop solar, many times using third-party ownership. Here in Illinois, we have a fleet of Walmarts that are now solarized. That was the first wave which started back in 2017, and there will be other waves. We now have 10 years of great legislation in Illinois incentivizing rooftop, ground mount, and community solar in Illinois. And the other thing to note is Walmart and many other corporations have very strong sustainability programs. If you Google Walmart sustainability, you will find their sustainability website, which is very robust. And they want to green their operations soup to nuts, meaning not only their physical operation, but also all the products that they're carrying in their stores. They want those manufacturers to be going green as well and have transparency around what are their best practices to reduce their carbon footprint, to be friendly to the environment, and to be friendly to human health and future generations. As Lewis mentioned in the previous slide, geographically, the Midwest is not the first comer to the solar industry, but we are booming. The Midwest is a great market now. We are looking at projects, of course, in Illinois, but also Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri. And then if you go out east, you will see solar everywhere in states like New Jersey, New York. Now Virginia is playing catch up. South Carolina has a big fleet of big box solar projects. And so many times you won't see the rooftop projects, right? Because those are 30-foot tall roofs. So that's one of the downsides of commercial rooftop solar, is it's not necessarily immediately visible or easy to show off. And so if your company really wants to show it off, then you might want to consider ground mount or carport projects. And here's a lovely map showing all the states where EDPR is active, with our headquarters down there in Houston, which is highlighted, and headquarters in New York City as well. The United States, I like to say, has chickenpox, and that is only growing. And this, we are still at the bottom of the S curve. We are about to go vertical. Solar is a very fast growing. Solar and wind are the fastest growing sources of new energy on the grid globally. And DG solar is a big part of that. We're going to triple the amount of solar in the US in the next 5 years. That means an annual growth rate of 60%. So it is a very, very fast growing industry. And if your company isn't considering rooftop solar, you absolutely should. You can look at our website and find contact information there as well at edprnadg.com. EDPR NADG.com is our website. What else should our listeners and viewers know about the map of EDPR's footprint here in North America, Louis?
Yeah, I will say that just with the range of opportunity, I think, many of our customers are looking to either get a pilot off the ground or they're looking for a portfolio solution. And I think in any cases, you really want to start wide. You want to be ambitious and you want to be able to find the opportunity. And I will say that just from doing this for 14 plus years, the opportunity is there and the results may surprise you. There are certain states, certain geographies that just may surprise you, and you need to run the numbers and be able to look at it. So I think there may be some states here, if you're looking at this, that you're familiar with. There may be some that you're not familiar with, and solar is changing. As to mention, the technology is certainly proven, and we have projects in operation for decades, and it's a robust, no moving parts, outdoor rated product. However, it's really just the economics and making this real for a facility owner and business owner. That's the part that's really changing. So we certainly have, wind at our backs with the IRA, but the local and regulatory environment is changing rapidly. And so I would just say there is opportunity out there. It may surprise you, and it's absolutely worth looking for.
Quick shout out to Carla Dawson, who I met in California at RE+. Nice to see you here, Carla. And I also wanted to answer the question that John had about end of life. Solar technology is now at a point where it will easily last for 30 years. So you put these panels on your roof, they'll be there day in and day out producing electricity for 30 years. And then at the end of life, what we will do is one of two things: decommission the project, meaning just take the materials off the roof or off the ground and recycle those, or repower the array, meaning replace the solar panels and some of the electronics like the inverters with upgraded, newer, best-of-breed technology, which is a thing now. We see repowering happening on the West Coast and on the East Coast where solar is more mature, and some of those projects were hitting what then was end of life, which is 20 years. Now we're at 30 years really for the technology, but it's completely recyclable. This stuff is not going to go to landfills. There's companies that specialize in repurposing solar panels and selling them or donating them to people in less developed countries. A solar panel after 20 years of life has more than 80% productivity left, right? So it starts out at 100% and then it declines at about 0.5% per year. It is degrading. It is getting baked by all that radiation and weather, but it still has life in it. And so there is an aftermarket for used solar panels and an aftermarket for recycling materials like the aluminum, the silver, the copper, the glass, the silicon, etc. All the materials are valuable and be recycled. And in the case of ground mount, there's also a steel foundation, or in rooftop, there's a steel racking system that is also highly recyclable and valuable materials. So we would love to get some other questions from the audience, and so please do not hesitate to chat your questions in, and we will be wrapping up in the next 10 minutes or so, but really appreciate everyone being here. I'm curious, Louis, when you think about common questions that C&I, as we call commercial industrial facility owners, what are some common questions that facility owners have that we could answer for our audience today?
Yeah, great point. I think John's question about, the term, the overall, how long the contract lasts and what happens after is really important. Some businesses aren't accustomed to having 20-year contracts, and some are. And, our average contract is right around 25 years. And the third-party project company, so, we would be the owner, and we're going to, own that asset. And I'll just acknowledge that can be a different dynamic than most businesses are used to if we're owning something on your property. It's different than a lease and it's different than an outright purchase. And I think if you have a long-term partner, these are companies with substantial balance sheets. EDPR is a $25 billion company, and we have a long track record of managing energy assets. And so, as the owner, just as many of our facility owners on the call today own their facility and treat it like theirs, this is the same thing with a solar panel. So with the entire system, just in terms of covering the maintenance over the course of the life, that is incorporated in the project company, and as well as the end of life. So, after, if you have a 25-year PPA, the go-to is that it's going to be left in the condition it was found. We would fully decommission the system if that is what is required, and that I would say that's common. And a lot of the repurposing and repowering, I think the industry as it matures even further is going to be providing more clarity and transparency on.
One of the questions I get a lot is, and this is both from facility owners and landowners, what is the environmental impact of solar panels on the environment when they're out there in the field? And when you think about it, these are hermetically sealed glass panels. They have to be waterproof and airtight in order to do their job day in and day out for 30 years. And so nothing is leaking out of the solar panels whatsoever. They are simply, it's as if you just put pieces of glass and aluminum out in the open. And so there's just the rain, etc., is running off the panels, and then they'll be there for 30 years, and then you're removing them and repurposing them or recycling them. There's absolutely no harm being done to the environment. And in the case of ground mount, if today the field where the solar array is going is a cornfield or a bean field, then tomorrow it could be pollinator habitat or habitat for sheep. You can do dual use solar, or what we call agri-solar or agrivoltaics, and grow crops like hay, or even crops for human food, strawberries, spinach, etc. And there's a very vibrant community around the development of these types of projects. So solar truly is good for the earth and good for rural communities. It is really great for taxing bodies like school districts. When you put a community solar array in a school district, the school district is going to benefit. And so you'll have extra resources for salaries and for teaching materials. And so it really is a feel good. It's good for people, it's good for profit, and it's good for planet.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It looks like we did have a hand raised. If you'd like to type your question into the chat or just unmute, please go ahead.
Oh, I have a question. My name is Carla, and I'm in the solar panel cleaning business, and we're seeing that in the commercial segment, the lack of awareness on the subject. And I just kind of wanted to know kind of your opinion on that. I'm based here in Southern California, where we have high soiling levels, and the Southwest has high soiling levels, and it's something that we're basically seeing that asset owners don't even realize they have to clean.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think and we certainly have a mature industry, but there's still more education to be done. I think we do model in, I think as the asset owner, there's really two things. We model in soiling, and that is location specific. It could be higher if it's next to a highway, but we do have a modeled and agreed upon soiling level that we're using to determine how much the solar array is going to be produced each year, what we guarantee the production for, and what that looks like over the 25-year plus life. Now, the second part is you can have a data-driven assessment for that. Contractually, we do budget to have cleanings that are done annually, or in some cases more than annually. And this can also just be condition based. So with the data that we're having, from knowing how much sunshine there is at any given level and knowing what the power is going to produce from the solar array, you may not know how, if you say the solar array is producing 2 megawatts today. I don't know if that's the right amount or not, but you do know that for a given amount of sunshine throughout the day and how long the days are, there should be a given amount of solar output. And so there can be condition-based monitoring. So as we see the soiling, producing less and less, then we can determine how to trigger, a truck roll, an O&M or operations and maintenance service call. So I think that's a good question. I think it's absolutely needed in order to meet the performance requirements of the system and to make sure that you're really getting the most out of it. So I think typically you're looking to clean at least annually. And really, I think more of the sophisticated asset owners have been moving towards a condition-based assessment.
And this is one of the good aspects, I think, of third-party ownership. We are highly incentivized at EDPR to make sure that the solar project is running optimally. And that includes keeping the panels clean, but also making sure that all of the electronics and any other glitches that may occur. Solar arrays do need maintenance. While much of it is set it and forget it, so to speak, and a good annual checkup is highly recommended. And so we only make money when the array is producing kWh. So we don't want our facility to be down for any length of time, and that includes declining due to soiling. So glass will accumulate grime, just like your car windows or your house windows. They need a good washing once in a while, and that will depend on the geography.
Yeah, and I think just to the cost to maintain and clean the array is built into the PPA pricing. That's a good thing to ask as you're going through and evaluating solar, and particularly when you're reviewing the contract as well, is what is included in annual maintenance. Typically, there's a cleaning as well as a mechanical inspection. And then typically every other year, there's an electrical inspection and, retorquing the bolts. And all of that is included because that is really the responsibility of the asset owner who runs that. So thanks for the question.
And while we take the final questions here, Louis, if you would just forward the slide so people can see our contact information, please reach out to us. Myself, Tim Montague, tim.montague@edp.com is my email. And Louis's email is louis.langlois, LANGLOIS @edp.com. So please do reach out to us and check out our website, edprnadg.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Please, we have time for a few more questions, so get your questions answered while we're here. And there's no such thing as a dumb question or a bad question. Solar is, it's a lot to take in if you are not an energy professional. So don't feel shy. Please ask your questions.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. I think another question about the research to determine the soiling level. So this can be, there's a lot of, I can just speak from EDPR's perspective, is learning off of our existing fleet. So we have sites that have been in operation, well more than a decade in different geographies. And so we can have those condition-based assessments. Just looking at previous data and looking at what we expected versus what we looked at. So we look at overall system performance, and the overall performance is impacted by how much sunshine there is. It depends on the angle of the sun, the temperature of the day, how much wind there is, and soiling. So there are many factors that go into it, and we have a performance-based model to be able to look at this. The soiling levels, there are industry standards. It's going to be different in the Northeast when you have, active rainfall versus if you're in, the American Southwest where you have a lot of dust and less rain. There are, in terms of other publications, SEIA, the Solar Energy Industry Association, has publications there. I would certainly encourage you to go there, as well as the, highly technical research of some of the national labs. Sandia as well as NREL in Colorado has done, great publications of what soiling can be in different areas, and also depending on the system type. Just for instance, if you have a panel that's very flat and you do have rainfall, as you've seen on your car, there could be pooling, and it's not necessarily a clean, that clean after the rain. But if you have a higher tilt, for instance, if it's a 20-degree or something tilt like a ground mount, you will get more cleaning. So great question. There are a lot of factors that go into it. We really want to rely on our existing performance data. And I know we're just past the 45-minute mark, so I really want to just thank you all for taking the time, for your interest in the webinar and for attending, and particularly just the active participation. And enjoy having the conversation, and thank you for your good questions. This is our first DG webinar that we've had, and we will follow up. Thank you for registering with the materials we have. We may have a link to the recording as well as the content that we reviewed. But thank you all so much. We're going to be, we'd be happy to work with you. We really want to have this, here is our contact information here. Feel free to reach out to Tim or myself for really any of your needs. Be happy to provide insight, answer questions, and help you qualify your own site or help you prioritize what you have in the mix.